Dad told me I needed to learn humility. He said that on the phone 4 days before my wedding, with the same tone he used when I was 16 and came home past curfew. I didn't cry, I didn't beg, I just stood in my kitchen in Guelph, Ontario, holding my phone against my ear, and I thought, okay, we're really doing this. Let me back up. My brother and I grew up in a split-level house in Burlington. My parents weren't cruel people, not on the surface. My dad coached my brother's hockey team every winter from the time my brother was 6 until he aged out at 17. My mum attended every single one of those games. She kept stats in a little notebook she bought at Staples. I did competitive swimming through high school. I don't think she attended more than a handful of my meets, and when I asked her once, I was maybe 14. She said it was harder to follow swimming. You couldn't really tell who was winning until it was over. I let it go. You learn to let things go. My grandparents on my dad's side were practical people. They built something real, a property management company in Hamilton that they ran together for 35 years. And when they retired, they sold it and they were comfortable. Not wealthy exactly, but comfortable. When my grandfather passed, and then my grandmother 2 years later, their estate went to my dad. Most of it. There was a provision, though, for my brother and me. They left each of us $60,000 in a registered education savings plan that had converted to a trust when we each turned 18. The condition was simple. The funds were to be used for post-secondary education, a first home purchase, or passed down at age 30 if neither of those things had happened. My dad was named the trustee. I used $22,000 of mine for my undergrad at the University of Guelph. I left the rest. I figured I'd use it toward a house eventually. My brother used every cent of his for a business course in Vancouver that he dropped out of after 1 semester. My parents never mentioned that to me. I found out years later, almost by accident. I met my husband, Theo, in the winter of 2021. He was a structural engineer. We dated for 2 years and he proposed on a Thursday evening in our apartment with takeout from a Thai place on Stone Road still sitting on the counter getting cold. It was not romantic in any conventional sense. I said yes before he finished the sentence. We booked our venue in March of 2023 for a June 2024 wedding. 14 months out. The venue was a property near Elora, one of those old farmhouses with a converted barn. We put down a non-refundable deposit of $8,500. We sent save the dates in April. My mum called me and said she and my dad were so happy. She cried a little. I cried too. My brother called me in October of 2023. He didn't call to congratulate me on the venue or ask how planning was going. He called to tell me that he and his girlfriend, they'd been together about 8 months, were planning a trip to Costa Rica in the second week of June 2024, and could I maybe move my wedding? Not to a different month, he said, just like a week or two either direction. I actually laughed, not meanly. I thought he was joking. He wasn't. I told him our venue was booked 14 months ago. I told him the deposit was non-refundable. I told him our save the dates had already gone out to 80 people. I told him I was sorry, but no, we were not moving our wedding date because he'd booked a vacation. He said he understood and that he'd figure something out. My mum called the next day. She said she'd been thinking about it, and she really felt like I should consider Theo's and my options, because this was a once-in-a-lifetime trip from my brother and his girlfriend, and family was so important, and wouldn't it be wonderful if we could all be together? I said we'd already done everything I just told my brother. Non-refundable deposit, save the dates out, 14 months of planning. She said she knew that, but surely these things could be worked around. I said no, respectfully, but clearly. No. My dad called the evening after that. He said fewer words than my mum. He said family comes first, and I was being selfish, and that I needed to think hard about what I really valued. I hung up and went and sat on the couch with Theo, and I told him what was happening, and he looked at me for a long moment and said, "They actually want you to move a wedding you've been planning for over a year." I said yes. He said, "Okay, we're not doing that." I said, "I know." The calls kept coming for 2 months. My mum tried the guilt approach, then the logic approach, then the emotional approach. My dad tried the authority approach, which stopped working on me around 2007. My brother never called again after that first conversation. He just let our parents fight his battle, which, honestly, told me everything I needed to know about who he'd become. In December, I stopped answering. I sent one text that said, "Our wedding date is June 14th, 2024. We would love to have you there. We are not changing it. Please let us know if you'll be attending, so we can confirm your seats with the caterer." My mum replied, "I can't believe you're doing this to our family." I put my phone face down on the kitchen table and went to finish addressing invitations. Here's what I didn't know was happening while all of this was going on. My dad, as the trustee of my grandparents' trust, had been making small withdrawals from my portion since 2021. Nothing enormous. A few thousand here, a few thousand there. I hadn't been monitoring it closely because I had no reason to think I needed to. The trust had quarterly statements that went to an email address I'd set up in university and barely checked anymore. When I finally logged in, this was January 2024, 5 months before the wedding. I sat at my desk for a long time, just staring at the screen. The balance should have been just under $38,000. It was $4,200. I called the trust company. They told me the withdrawals had been authorized by the trustee. My father, they gave me dates. The largest single withdrawal was $18,000 in November 2023, about 6 weeks after I told my brother we weren't moving the wedding. I called a lawyer the next morning. Her name doesn't matter, but she was based in Hamilton and she came highly recommended by a colleague of Theo's family. I bought every document I had. She looked at everything and she said, "The trust terms are clear. Your father did not have discretionary authority to redirect these funds to himself or to any third party. This is a breach of fiduciary duty." She said I had strong grounds to pursue recovery. I want to be honest about how I felt in that moment. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I sat in that office chair and I felt something cold and heavy settle in my chest, because there was a part of me, even then, that was hoping there had been some mistake, some administrative error. Something explainable. There wasn't. Through my lawyer's investigation over the following weeks, the picture became clearer. My father had redirected $33,600 from my trust over the course of roughly 2 years. A portion of it had gone toward my brother's Costa Rica trip, flights, resort, activities, all of it. Another portion had quietly covered a shortfall in my parents' home equity line of credit. The rest was harder to trace, but my lawyer said it didn't change the legal situation either way. I made a decision. I would not confront my parents before the wedding. I would not give them the chance to make the wedding about this. Theo agreed. We told no one. We just kept planning. My dad called me in June, 4 days before the wedding, and told me I needed to learn humility. He said he and my mum would not be attending. He said they needed to make clear to me that my behaviour had consequences. He said maybe one day I would understand what it meant to put family first. I said, "I hope you both have a good weekend." And I hung up. The morning of June 14th, 2024, I got ready in a room above the barn, with my 2 closest friends helping me with my hair. It was a warm morning, already 22 degrees by 10 o'clock. I wore my grandmother's pearl earrings, the ones she'd left me specifically, not part of the estate, just hers for me. I put them in, and I looked in the mirror, and I felt, more than anything, calm. There were 2 empty chairs in the front row with my parents' name cards on them. I'd left them there on purpose. I didn't have them removed. I wanted everyone who came to see exactly what was there and what wasn't. My uncle, my dad's younger brother, walked me down the aisle. He'd called me the week before and said he'd heard what was happening and that nothing would keep him from being there. He cried harder than anyone at the ceremony. He's not a man who cries easily. 81 people watched me marry Theo in a converted barn outside Elora on a Friday afternoon in June. The food was excellent. The speeches were long in the good way, and at some point near the end of the reception, after the dancing had started and the bar was open, Theo walked up to the microphone and asked for everyone's attention. The room went quiet, the way rooms do when something real is about to happen. He stood there for a second. He's not a man who talks a lot. He thinks before he speaks, always, which is one of the reasons I married him. He said, I want to say one more thing about my wife. She planned every detail of today, every flower, every song, every menu item, and she did it while being told by people who should have protected her that she was selfish for refusing to give this day up. She didn't flinch, she didn't beg, she just kept going. And I want everyone in this room to know that the woman I married is the steadiest person I have ever met, and that I don't take that for granted. You could have heard a pin drop. Then my uncle started clapping, and then everyone started clapping, and I pressed my hand over my mouth because I was not going to cry in front of 81 people. I failed at that. The legal process took 7 months after the wedding. My lawyer filed a formal complaint against my father as trustee. We went through a mediation process required under Ontario's Trustee Act before we could proceed to litigation. My father arrived at the mediation with a family lawyer of his own. My mother did not attend. My brother did not attend. My father did not apologise. He sat across a table from me in a boardroom in downtown Hamilton, and he looked at me like I was someone he didn't quite recognise, and his lawyer made arguments about informal family agreements and extenuating circumstances, and my lawyer dismantled each one with documentation. The mediator's recommendation was accepted. My father was ordered to repay the full $33,600 plus interest calculated from the date of each withdrawal, plus a portion of my legal fees. The total came to just over $41,000. My father paid it. He had no choice. I didn't feel triumphant then either. I felt tired. I felt the particular exhaustion of having to fight someone who was supposed to be on your side and never was, not really, and finally understanding that there's no version of that fight that leaves you whole. Theo and I used the recovered funds as part of the down payment on a house in East Guelph. We closed in February. It's a semi-detached on a quiet street with a small backyard and a kitchen that gets afternoon light. We painted the second bedroom yellow in March because we are expecting our first child in September. My mother texted me in April. The text said, "I heard you're expecting. I'd really love to talk when you're ready." I read it. I didn't reply that day. I showed it to Theo and he said, "That's up to you, completely." I know that. I haven't replied yet. My dad has not reached out. Neither has my brother. My uncle came to our housewarming in March and stood in our kitchen, eating cheese and crackers and looking at the backyard and said, "Your grandmother would have loved this place." I had to go into the hallway for a minute after that. There are things I know now that I didn't know when I was a kid standing at the end of a pool lane while my mom sat in the car in the parking lot. I know that some people love you the way they love a piece of furniture, present, useful, and easily rearranged when inconvenient. I know that choosing yourself is not the same as being selfish, no matter how many times someone with an agenda tries to tell you it is. I know that the steadiest ground you can stand on is the one you built with someone who shows up. Theo showed up. My uncle showed up. 81 people showed up. That's what I think about when I look at the yellow walls in the second bedroom. I think about my dad's words sometimes, learn humility, and I wonder if he understood what he was actually asking. He wasn't asking me to be humble. He was asking me to disappear quietly so no one would have to feel uncomfortable. Those are not the same thing. What happened in that mediation boardroom in Hamilton wasn't luck. It wasn't fate. It was the direct result of choices, his and mine. He chose, repeatedly and deliberately, to take something that wasn't his. And I chose, when I finally saw the full picture, not to look away from it. Those two choices in collision produced the only outcome they could. When you act without integrity, when you treat someone's trust as a resource to be managed rather than a relationship to be honoured, you don't avoid consequences, you just delay them. My dad spent 2 years believing the distance between his actions and their cost was permanent. It wasn't. There's something I keep coming back to, and it's this. I almost didn't check that email account. I almost let it go another year, maybe 2. I'd been trained very effectively and over a long time to not ask too many questions, to accept the version of events I was given, to be grateful for what I had and not look too closely at what was missing. That training, the habit of not looking, is one of the more insidious things a family can pass down. It masquerades as peacekeeping. It's actually just a way of protecting people, who don't deserve protection at the expense of people who do. Choosing to look and then choosing to act on what I saw required something I didn't know I had in that quantity. It required me to trust my own judgment when everyone around me, my parents, implicitly my brother, was telling me I was the problem. That kind of clarity doesn't come from being certain. It comes from being willing to sit with the uncertainty and move forward anyway. Theo didn't make that decision for me. My lawyer didn't make it for me. I made it at a kitchen table in Guelph at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night by myself, looking at a number on a screen that didn't add up. I think that's the part people don't talk about enough. Not the legal outcome, not the $41,000, not even the speech at the reception. The part that mattered was the moment I decided that what I knew was worth acting on, even though acting on it was going to cost me something. It cost me the version of my family I'd been holding on to, the one where my parents were basically good people who sometimes got things wrong. That version was easier. It was also fiction. What I have instead is a semi-detached house with afternoon light in the kitchen, a husband who means what he says, an uncle who showed up, and the second bedroom painted yellow for a person who hasn't arrived yet. That's not a consolation prize. That's what it looks like when the right things compound over time. When the choices you make from a place of honesty, even when they're hard, build something that actually holds. My dad hasn't called. I don't know if he will. I'm not waiting.